Well, for those of you who have been watching the channel for some time, you know that I have a 1967 Eldorado, which, by the way, was sent to me by a YouTube viewer. I also have a 1967 Buick Riviera. Both vehicles are black and have no vinyl roof on them. And I've been searching for a 66 Toronado for some time. I always thought the 66 Toronado was the best of the 66 to 70 generation. The 67 looks similar, but there are a number of features on the 67 that I really just don't care for versus the 66. The first is the loss of the eyebrows over top of the headlights. And the second is the egg crate grille up front, which also carries over into the taillight theme in the rear. So I've been looking for a 66 for some time, and thank you again, a YouTube viewer sent me a 1966 Toronado ad that was for sale on Craigslist in the Seattle area. And I called the seller, and here it is. Now, unfortunately, in the Midwest in April, it's hard to get a sunny day, but this car is finished in a beautiful color called Autumn Bronze, which is one of my favorite colors on the 1966 Toronado. It's kind of this red with metallic orange and gold flakes in it, and in the sunlight, it just is particularly beautiful. But unfortunately, I couldn't get a sunny day here in a long stretch of days, so you'll just have to see it under this lighting until I can correct that or the weather corrects itself. Regardless, this 66 Toronado, as I mentioned, was sold in Seattle. That's where I bought it from. And it has relatively few options. It does have cornering lights, you can see there at the bottoms of the fenders. And it does have AM radio, and that's really about it. Doesn't have air conditioning, no power windows, no power locks, but who cares? I just think that the 66 Toronado represents the zenith of GM design, which was really firing on all cylinders in the mid-1960s. From any angle, this car is just dramatically striking, and I think this rear three-quarter is particularly beautiful. It just shows off the beautiful wheel flares, which would be copied by so many different automakers after this 1966 Toronado was introduced, even all the way through to today. But the rear three-quarter with that feature line that comes down from the roof and starts forming the rear section of the body, including the trunk, I think is just particularly elegant. And interestingly, it's the same feature line that can be found on the Buick Riviera, although for Buick, that line doesn't go on and form the trunk. It kind of crashes into another surface on the body side that forms the rear of the vehicle in a similarly elegant treatment. Though they really don't look alike, the Toronado and Riviera shared a number of components, including floor pans, rockers, front windshield, A-pillars, roof, rear glass, the side window glass, the door inners. So the cars had quite a bit in common, and they also shared quite a bit with the Eldorado, but the Eldorado had a different roof panel, different rear backlight. It did share the A-pillar and the windshield with the Toronado and Riviera. And of course, the Toronado and the Eldorado were both front-wheel drive, while the Riviera kept its rear-wheel drive despite having the same platform designation as the Toronado and Eldorado. The Toronado and Eldorado are front-wheel drive. As I mentioned, this was General Motors' first mass-produced front-wheel drive vehicle. There certainly were other vehicles that were front-wheel drive before this, including Cords and Citroëns and others. But the Toronado was really GM's first foray into this front-wheel drive space for a mainstream automobile. And Oldsmobile had an exclusive on what GM called, or Oldsmobile called, the Unitized Power Package, or UPP, which was the name that Oldsmobile gave this 425 cubic inch V8 that made 385 horsepower. This was Oldsmobile's most powerful engine in 1966. In all the other Oldsmobiles, the top engine that you could get was a 375 horsepower V8, and most of the vehicles came standard with a 365 horsepower V8, like the Olds 98s. So this Toronado had a little bit extra oomph to it. And the 425 cubic inch V8 was backed by an all-new turbohydromatic 425 trans, which was effectively a turbohydromatic 400 that was split after the torque converter. And then the torque converter's power was transferred to the transmission via a very thick high-vo chain. And that transmission was pointing forward in the car. It was connected to a forward differential, which then was connected to CV shafts that drove the front wheels. Interestingly, while Buick decided not to have the front-wheel drive be a part of the Riviera for a number of reasons, one of which was Buick engineers just felt that the car was especially nose-heavy and couldn't handle all that well with front-wheel drive. And the second was cost, because this unitized power package setup cost the vehicle about $400 to $500 more in 1966 dollars. That would be $4,000 to $5,000 more today than the rear-wheel drive setup. So Buick instead went with rear-wheel drive and full coil suspension with an X-frame. These vehicles, like the Toronado and the Eldorado, both have torsion bar front suspension, single leaf rear springs with 6 total shock absorbers, 2 up front and 4 in the rear, lateral as well as vertical shock absorbers that are locating that rear end. In any case, Buick engineered the final drive setup for the Olds Toronado and Cadillac Eldorado despite not using it. Buick Division engineered it, built it, and sold it to Oldsmobile and Cadillac, and guessing they charged a decent amount to their sister divisions to do so. And here we have the interior of this 1966 Toronado, and it's a Toronado Deluxe interior. I'll show you in a minute. On the Deluxe, one of the interesting features is that there's a door handle for the front passengers as well as the rear passengers. There's a separate door handle at the back of that front door so that you can open the door and get out. This interior on these 1966 Tornados was a one-year-only interior, and Oldsmobile got some complaints that it didn't look overly rich, given this was Oldsmobile's most expensive car at the time. And so for 1967, it was redesigned by Oldsmobile's interior design team that included and was led by Blaine Jenkins, and he added a bunch of buttons on the 1967 interior, changed it up a little bit, made it a bit more luxurious, but I think this 1966 interior is at least quite handsome, and especially in this autumn bronze color, this dipped color that matches the exterior. It's just a great-looking interior overall. And here you can see another strange feature of the 66 Toronado interior, as well as both of those door handles. Look on the passenger door. You can see the door handle in the front, the door handle in the rear for the rear seat passengers. But these 66 Tornados have this interesting driver's cockpit area where the instruments and that floor mat there create this black uniform type environment that Oldsmobile thought, I guess, made it look more aircraft-like, maybe including that 4-spoke steering wheel. That is an integral floor mat embedded into the carpet, and you can tell cars that are original because they still have that rubber mat. A lot of times the carpet has been replaced, and when you replace the carpet, it doesn't have that mat that comes with it. But that is stock. That is how these came from the factory. And it's a strange and interesting feature. I guess it works fine, but I haven't really seen another car from the domestic auto companies that had a similar integral floor mat. And this car doesn't have it, but the passenger floor mat, if you got the optional floor mat, it just was a cutout for that area on the passenger side. If anybody has a spare Toronado floor mat from the era that you'd like to sell, be sure to message me because that would be something I wouldn't mind adding to this particular vehicle. We'll close out here with just a short video of driving the car around. You can see it's got that rolling drum speedometer that gave instant readings. The Riviera also had a speedometer just like that. And here I've got the headlights up so you can see those too. Thankfully, they work on this car. There's the turn signal, which I think looks pretty cool as well. Just a smooth cruiser. And this engine is very peppy. This turbohydromatic 425 in 1966 still had the switch pitch stator, which enabled 2 stall speeds in the transmission. So if you depress the accelerator more than 60% of the way, you get a different stall speed than if you have the accelerator just slightly depressed. And that allows for greater performance as well as economy. The stall speeds are also different at idle. At idle, the transmission switches to the higher stall speed, so there's less creep at a stoplight. I don't think that was something that customers were concerned about, but that is one of the features of it. Regardless, stay tuned for a detailed video on this 66 Toronado, and we're also going to interview on the channel Dick Rusin, who was a junior designer on the team that did the Oldsmobile Toronado, and Dick was responsible for the rear of the vehicle. So stay tuned for that. Dick is also the owner of the only Corvette-powered Mangusta. Dick's car was actually formerly owned by General Motors. He bought it from GM out of a lottery, and he's owned it ever since then. He's also written a book about it called Bella Mangusta. I'll put some information in the description. Feel free to buy it. It's a wonderful book with lots of photos about his particular Mangusta, but also talks about automotive design and defines a number of terms. So if you're looking to learn more about automotive design and want a nice coffee table book that your friends can pick up when they're at your house, or just one that you can thumb through, it's a great book. Again, it's called Bella Mangusta by Dick Rusin. See the link in the description for more details, and stay tuned for an interview with Dick about his involvement in the 1966 Toronado. Till next time, thanks again for watching, and take care.